Hey everybody, SDEFGEC's here with Woodwork Plans. You know, there's nothing quite as satisfying as building something with your own two hands. That feeling when you step back and admire a finished woodworking project, that's the good stuff. But let's be honest, sometimes the road to woodworking success is paved with, well, a few sawdust piles of mistakes. We've all been there, right? The thing is, woodworking mistakes can be frustrating. They can cost you time and money, and sometimes they can even be a little dangerous. But fear not, my friend, because today, we're going to talk about some of the most common woodworking mistakes that folks make. And more importantly, we're going to show you how to avoid them. So, whether you're a beginner woodworker, or you've been at it for a while, stick around because I guarantee you'll learn something new today. And who knows, it might just save you from a woodworking headache down the road. Alright, let's talk about the golden rule of woodworking, the one your grandpappy probably told you about: measure twice, cut once. This isn't just some old-timey advice, it's a principle that stands the test of time. And you know what? Gramps was right. This simple rule can save you a lot of frustration and wasted materials. Accurate measurements are the foundation of any successful woodworking project. Without them, even the best plans can go awry. I mean, think about it. You can have the coolest design in the world, the fanciest tools, and the most expensive lumber, but if your measurements are off, your project is going to be off too. Precision is key. And nobody wants a wonky bookcase or a lopsided coffee table, right? These mistakes can be avoided with careful measuring, so what's the best way to make sure your measurements are accurate? It all starts with the right tools and techniques. Well, first off, invest in a good quality tape measure. A reliable tape measure can make a world of difference. And when you're using it, make sure you're reading it correctly. Take your time to understand the markings. It sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many people get tripped up by the little lines on a tape measure. Misreading these can lead to big mistakes. Now here's a little trick I use. Once I've made a measurement, I like to transfer it directly to my workpiece using a marking knife or a sharp pencil. This ensures precision. This helps me avoid any errors that might occur if I try to remember the measurement or transfer it multiple times. Direct transfer is always more accurate. And speaking of transferring measurements, let's talk about squares. These tools are indispensable. A good combination square is an essential tool for any woodworker. It ensures your angles are perfect. It helps you make sure your cuts are square, your lines are parallel, and your angles are accurate. This is crucial for a professional finish. Trust me, having a reliable square on hand will save you a lot of headaches in the long run. It's a small investment for big returns. Now I know what you're thinking. Steve, I'm not building a rocket here, it's just a birdhouse. But even simple projects benefit from accuracy. And you're right, not every project requires absolute precision. However, good habits in measuring can elevate even the simplest tasks. But getting into the habit of measuring accurately will make all the difference in the quality of your work, no matter what you're building. Consistency is key. So take your time, double-check your measurements, and don't be afraid to use those measuring tools. They are your best friends in the workshop. Okay, here's something they don't always tell you in woodworking class. Wood is alive. Well, not literally, but it does move. You see, wood is like a sponge. It absorbs moisture from the air, and when it does, it expands. This is a natural process that happens because wood is hygroscopic, meaning it has the ability to attract and hold water molecules from the surrounding environment. When the air gets more humid, the wood swells up as it takes in moisture. This can be especially noticeable in the summer months or in regions with high humidity. Conversely, when the air gets drier, such as in winter or in arid climates, the wood releases that moisture and shrinks. This constant cycle of expansion and contraction is what we call wood movement. This constant expansion and contraction is called wood movement, and if you don't account for it, it can wreak havoc on your projects. Imagine spending hours on a beautiful piece of furniture only to have it warp or crack because you didn't consider how the wood would move. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're building a tabletop, and you glue up a bunch of boards without accounting for wood movement. Well, when the humidity changes, those boards are going to want to expand and contract, and because they're glued together, they can't move freely. This restriction can cause significant stress within the wood. This can lead to warping, cracking, or even the whole tabletop splitting apart. Not good. The last thing you want is to see your hard work ruined by something that could have been prevented. So how do you deal with wood movement? The key is to plan ahead and understand the nature of the material you're working with. The first step is to understand how wood moves. wood expands and contracts most in width across the grain and much less in length along the grain. So when you're designing your projects, try to minimize the amount of wood that's exposed across the grain, especially in areas where dimensional stability is important. This can help reduce the impact of wood movement on your finished piece. Another important factor is how you store your wood. Ideally, you want to store your lumber in a cool, dry place with good air circulation. This helps to keep the wood's moisture content stable. And if you're working on a project over a long period, it's a good idea to let the wood acclimate to your shop environment for a few days before you start working with it. This allows the wood to adjust to the humidity and temperature of your workspace. This will help minimize any movement that might occur after the project is assembled. Proper acclimation can make a big difference in the stability of your finished piece. Now there are a bunch of different joinery techniques you can use to accommodate for wood movement, like using breadboard ends on tabletops, or incorporating expansion gaps into your designs. These techniques allow the wood to move without causing damage to the overall structure. We'll cover those in more detail in another video, but for now, just remember that wood movement is a real thing, and it's something you need to be aware of every time you step into the shop. Understanding and planning for wood movement can save you a lot of headaches and ensure your projects stand the test of time. So next time you're in the shop, take a moment to think about how the wood will move and plan accordingly. Your future self will thank you. Happy woodworking, and remember, a little knowledge about wood movement can go a long way in making your project successful. We'll see you in the next video with more tips and tricks to help you master the art of woodworking. Chapter 3. The right tool for the job. No excuses. You know, it's tempting to grab the closest tool and try to make it work, especially when you're in the middle of a project and you're feeling impatient. But let me tell you, using the wrong tool for the job is a recipe for disaster. Not only can it lead to shoddy work, but it can also be downright dangerous. Let's talk about saws for a minute. You wouldn't use a hacksaw to cut down a tree, would you? Well, the same logic applies to woodworking. Each type of saw is designed for a specific purpose, and using the wrong one can damage your workpiece, your saw, or even yourself. For example, a miter saw is great for making precise crosscuts on trim and molding, but it's not the right tool for ripping down a sheet of plywood. For that, you'd want to use a circular saw or a table saw. And speaking of table saws, never ever use your hand to freehand a cut on a table saw. That's what push sticks and featherboards are for. And it's not just saws, folks. Using the wrong chisel, the wrong screwdriver, or even the wrong sandpaper can lead to problems. So take the time to learn about your tools, read the manuals, and practice using them safely and correctly. Your projects will thank you for it. Now, I know that buying a whole bunch of specialized tools can get expensive, but here's the good news. You don't need every tool under the sun to get started in woodworking. Start with the basics and gradually add to your collection as your skills and your projects demand it. And remember, a good quality tool will last you a lifetime, so it's worth investing in the best you can afford. Chapter 4. Slow and steady wins the woodworking race. We live in a world of instant gratification, don't we? Everything around us is designed to be faster, more efficient, and more immediate. We want everything fast, and we want it now. From fast food to high-speed internet, our lives are built around speed. But woodworking is one of those things that can't be rushed. It demands patience, precision, and a steady hand. In fact, rushing through a project is one of the surest ways to make mistakes. A single error can set you back hours, if not days. When you're in a hurry, you're more likely to make careless mistakes like misreading measurements, skipping steps, or not letting glue dry properly. These small errors can compound into bigger problems. And let me tell you, those mistakes can come back to haunt you later on. A misaligned piece or a poorly glued joint can ruin an entire project. I remember one time I was working on a set of cabinets and I was in a huge rush to get them finished. The deadline was looming and I felt the pressure. I was so focused on speed that I didn't take the time to properly measure and mark my drawer pulls. I thought I could eyeball it and save some time. Well, guess what? I ended up drilling all the holes in the wrong spot and I had to start the whole drawer front over again. Talk about frustrating. It was a hard lesson learned. So, what's the solution? Slow down, take a deep breath, and focus on the task at hand. Take your time, plan ahead, and don't be afraid to walk away from a project if you're feeling rushed or frustrated. Sometimes a short break can provide a fresh perspective. It's much better to take a break and come back to it later with fresh eyes than to try to power through and risk making a mistake. Your future self will thank you. And speaking of planning ahead, one of the best things you can do to avoid mistakes is to dry fit your projects before you break out the glue. This step is crucial for ensuring everything fits perfectly. This means assembling everything without glue or fasteners to make sure all the parts fit together properly and that you're happy with the overall look. It's a trial run that can save you a lot of headaches. Trust me, it's much easier to fix a mistake during the dry fit stage than it is after you've already glued and screwed everything together. Adjustments are simpler and less stressful. Remember, woodworking should be enjoyable. It's a craft that rewards patience and attention to detail. So, take your time, enjoy the process, and don't sweat the small stuff. Each step is a part of the journey. After all, it's just wood, and you can always make more sawdust. Embrace the process and the learning that comes with it. Well folks, there you have it. 4 common woodworking mistakes and how to avoid them. Remember, accurate measurements, understanding wood movement, using the right tools, and taking your time are all key to woodworking success. Now I know that making mistakes can be frustrating, but try to look at them as learning opportunities. Every mistake you make is a chance to learn something new and improve your skills. So don't be afraid to experiment, try new things, and yes, even make a few mistakes along the way. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more woodworking tips and tricks. And be sure to share this video with your woodworking buddies so they can avoid these common mistakes too. Until next time, happy woodworking.